I have a ton of retro handhelds. They're all pretty great. There's only a few of them that I'm not really a fan of, but my favorite one has always been the Miyoo Mini Plus. It's small, it's pocketable, the screen looks really nice, it plays the games that I want to play on a retro handheld, and with custom software on it, it's nearly a perfect experience. But I keep hearing people talking about the TrimUI Brick. So when Mech DIY reached out and asked if I wanted to check out the Brick, I said absolutely. There's links down below, but they're not paying me. They just sent me the device. They sent me the all-metal Brick hammer version, and the build quality on this thing is really, really good. I'm not a huge fan of the software that came with it. So just like I did with the Miyoo Mini Plus, I decided to install a custom operating system on the TrimUI Brick. I'll show you how to do that, as well as talk about what I like most about the operating system. But first, let's talk about the hardware. Actually, before we talk about hardware, I want to talk about my extended use with this device. I just got back from going to Las Vegas for a week with my family, and I figured I would bring the TrimUI Brick with me so that I could say something about it when I got back. I already have most of this video done at this point, but I wanted to talk about the extended use of this device when I had nothing else to try, which kind of forced me to use it all of the time. This thing really came in clutch, but it isn't without its issues, which I want to talk about in this section right now. Number one, there was one time where I plugged it into my portable battery bank that I had brought with me in order to charge it up, and I'm not sure, but I think it was drawing power out of the TrimUI Brick, and it ended up being dead at 1%. So I ended up unhooking that and then plugging it directly into the wall in order to charge it. That fixed it. The second thing that I ran into an issue, and this one happened multiple times, but what happened was I would go to turn it on and it just would not respond. So basically, when you hold down the power button, it turns on and brings you right back to the game you left off. I'll show you how that works later on in the video, but it would just sit there and do nothing. And so I did a little bit of research, and it turns out what you have to do is first eject your SD card and then hold down the volume down and power buttons at the same time for like 30 seconds or so, and you're not going to get any feedback at all. But then when you turn it back on, again, still with the SD card out, it boots up into the default operating system. Then when I put my SD card back in, everything's fine, and it loads right into NextUI. And I don't know if this is something to do with NextUI or if this is something to do with the TrimUI Brick. If I find out more, I'll let you know in the description down below that like button. But I just wanted to let everybody know that that might be a possibility. And if you know what the solution is or like why that's happening, let us know in the comments down below so that we can all learn from your experience. That happened twice, and both of the times that happened, I lost the save, because what happens is when you hold down the power button and you turn it off, it makes a quick save right then, and then when you turn it back on, it jumps right into where you left off. Well, because I had to pop out the SD card and do this weird little workaround, when I booted it back up, that quick save was gone. So if you're worried about that happening, make sure that you use the menu button and save state the traditional way, and everything there should be absolutely fine. I had not been doing that. I would just pick it up, turn it on, play, and then turn it off. And I did that for quite a bit of time, and I actually lost an entire chapter's worth of time in Shining Force. And if you've played Shining Force, then you probably are aware that a chapter of that game is actually pretty long. So make sure that you're saving manually often. All right, now let's get into hardware. Basically, my goals for a device like this are to be able to play NES games, Super Nintendo games, Sega Genesis, TurboGrafx, Game Boy, GBA, Game Boy Color. Those are the games that I know. Those are the games that I want to play. Anything else on top of that list is a bonus. I wanted this to be a small form factor that I could always take with me, like the Miyoo Mini Plus, without having to think about it. It needed to be small enough to be pocketable. That meant it needed to be kind of flat, small, no thumbsticks. That's definitely important. But I also wanted a 4:3 screen, which works really well whenever you're playing emulation systems from the 8 and 16-bit era. That way you will have minimal letterboxing or pillar boxing when you're playing those. So how does this stack up against my goals? Well, the TrimUI Brick has a 1024 by 768 3.2 inch IPS screen. Just so you don't have to do the math yourself, that's a 4x3 screen at 400 pixels per inch. This is smaller than the screen that's on the Miyoo Mini Plus, which is a 3.5 inch screen. That might seem bad, but at the same time, this is also a higher resolution and a higher pixel density, which means games running at full screen still look great, especially once you throw some shaders on them in order to clean them up. I'll show you how to do that when I talk about the operating system that I installed. But because this is a 4x3 screen, most games running with integer scaling will have some small letterboxing or pillar boxing. I will say that one thing about my screen is on a black background, you can kind of see some light bleed from the side, just a little bit on the corners, especially in a dark room. It's not a deal breaker for me, but definitely something that I noticed. Under the hood is a 1.8 gigahertz A133P CPU and a PowerVR GE8300 GPU, which runs at 660 megahertz. It has 1 gigs of LPDDR3 RAM and a single SD card slot, which can take up to a terabyte card. As far as power, this checks all of the boxes. It plays 8 and 16-bit games that I want to play, plus a little bit from N64 and PlayStation systems, but I got it to focus on the earlier stuff, which is why not having a joystick is not a big deal. It also has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, as well as a headphone jack, a 3000 milliamp hour battery, which lasts up to 5 hours, depending on what games you're playing or systems you're playing. Let's talk about the controls. First off, the D-pad and face buttons feel great. They're tactile without feeling loud. Feeling loud without being loud. They're a little small. I wouldn't play fighting games on this, but then again, I wouldn't play fighting games on a system like this unless I was playing against somebody else. And even though it supports Bluetooth, I really don't see myself using this for multiplayer games ever. I'm sure that there's the possibility of you doing this over the internet or something, but there's just way too many hoops that you would have to jump through for me to care about doing that. The shoulder buttons on the back can be swapped out, and it comes with replacements if you don't like the ones that are already on there. They feel nice and they're in the right place. The little shelf on the back made by the buttons makes it a little bit easier to hold, I think. On the bottom, you have 2 front-firing speakers. I will say that these speakers, they're pretty bad. If you turn them up too loud, I've been getting quite a bit of distortion. That said, I wouldn't turn these speakers up that loud anyway. At normal volume, they sound, I'm going to say fine. Here's what they sound like at normal volume. And then here's what they sound like when they're turned all the way up. Between the speakers, you have 3 buttons. There's the start, select, and then the menu button. My brain really struggles with this particular layout. I wish that the menu button was, I don't know, farther away from the start and select, because I hit that menu button a lot when I mean to press the select button, though it may be something that I'll just get used to over time. Then between the D-pad and the face buttons, you have these 2 buttons. They're LEDs, so they light up, and that's how everyone knows that you're a gamer. And there's even, if people are sitting on the other side and can't see those buttons, the back has an LED too, so everybody will know that you're a gamer. By the way, you can go into the settings and turn all of these lights off if you want. But like I said at the beginning, I don't want the stock operating system on here. I don't really like the layout of it, and it just feels kind of clunky to me. So I decided to try something new. I figure this is a minimalist system, so I wanted to go with a minimal operating system. I was going to install one that's called MinUI, but then I saw that there was a MinUI fork called NextUI, and it lets you scrape artwork. I like the simplicity of MinUI, but I also really do prefer to have artwork for the games shown when I'm scrolling through, especially if I'm looking for something new to play. So let's install NextUI. It's really simple to do. Now let's move on to installing our operating system. If you click on the link in the description down below that like button, you're going to be taken to this page right here, which is where you're going to get NextUI. The first thing that we need to do, obviously, is download it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the release, which is 6.1.2. And as I scroll down here, I'm looking for the NextUI-all. If you just want like the least amount of stuff, you can get base. If you already have base and then you want to add stuff afterwards, that would be the extras. But if you're starting from scratch, I'm just going to grab all because maybe in the future I will want something that's in that all, and I don't want to have to do this again. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that and download it. While it's downloading, I'm actually going to go right here. It says for a fresh installation, instructions right here. If you are updating from a previous release, well, let's be honest, you probably don't need me for that, but that link is right there. But I'll go in here and it's going to give you the written guide of what I'm talking about here. Basically, it's telling you step by step what you got to do. So I'm going to have to insert my SD card into the computer and then format it using FAT32. If you are on Windows, you're going to want to use Rufus to format it. And because I'm on a Mac, I'm just going to use Disk Utility. And here's Disk Utility. And I'm going to come right down here to my CalDigit TS4 card reader. And I'm going to hit Erase. And it's going to ask me to name it. I'm going to name this NextUI. And it wants you to format it either exFAT or FAT32. So I'll go with exFAT. And I'm going to hit Erase. After a few minutes, it'll be all done. So I'm just going to click Done, which was actually off screen, so you couldn't see it. Sorry about that. But now I no longer need Disk Utility. Now that I have that done, the next thing that I'm going to do is I need to find and unzip the file that I downloaded from the GitHub page. So I'm going to go into my Finder, and in Finder I have this is the file that I just downloaded. So I'm just going to double click it to unzip it, and here it is unzipped. What does it say to do next? Well, it just says open the unzip directory and copy all the content to the root of your SD card. So whoops, I did not mean to do that. So let's grab this, and I'm going to make a new window. Going to be pointed to NextUI. This is my SD card, and all I have to do is select all of these and copy them. Now that I've got everything copied over to my SD card, I'm going to take a look at the README right here. And it says if I scroll down for a little bit, it's going to tell you the BIOS files that I'm going to need. So I'm going to need some BIOS files. Now, BIOS files, just like ROMs, are copyrighted. So you're going to have to provide your own, and I can't help you out with that. So don't bother asking down in the comment section where you can get those ROMs, because I will just respond with,
"That's a good question."
It says here that we're going to need GBA_BIOS.bin, PCE for PC Engine, which is the TurboGrafx 16. We're going to need syscard 3 for PKM. I believe that's Pokemon Mini, which I don't really care about, but you'll need BIOS.min. And then for SGB, which I don't remember what SGB is off the top of my head, Super Game Boy, that's what that is. That would be sgb.bios. So let's go ahead and copy those files over into my BIOS folder real quick. I'll go into RetroDeck, and then BIOS is right here. And now all I have to do is find the ones that they're specifically talking about. So first off, GBA_BIOS. GBA_BIOS.bin. I'm going to drag that over here into the BIOS folder. Here's syscard 3, BIOS.min. There we go. SGB.BIOS.bin. Awesome. Next up, I need to bring my ROMs over. So I'm going to go ahead and look in my ROMs folder. RetroDeck ROMs. Here we go. And I could easily just copy all of this stuff over, but I don't want every single game. So I'm going to pick very specific ones that I want to be able to play on the go. This is not my everything emulation machine. So first off, we'll go with Commodore 64, because I really do like my Commodore 64 back in the day. So now I have the waiting game where I have to wait for all of these files to transfer. But once they're transferred, I'm going to eject my SD card, pop it in the TrimUI Brick, and I'll show you the rest. Real quick, I feel like I owe you an apology. I went to record my first boot of this, and I hit the wrong button on my camera, and it didn't actually record. So then when I stood up to turn my camera off and I pushed the record button, I started recording, and that was a mistake on my part, and I apologize for that. So you can't see what it looks like when it boots up the first time, but it's pretty much the same as when you turn it on anytime once you've got the operating systems installed. The only difference is that it takes a little bit longer to do the first time, and there's like loading bars and stuff like that. Once you've got everything installed and you turn it on, you're going to see this menu. Let's go through some of the features that are in NextUI. Navigate down to the Tools menu on the bottom and press A. Now, if you want game art like I do, you can install the artwork scraper. Here, let me show you how to do it. Head down to the Pack Store, which is basically a bunch of add-ons that you can install. And then you can find the tools that you can install without needing to put your SD card in a computer or hook it up to a computer or anything. It all just works over the internet. If you want to install the artwork scraper, it's under Media. And because I've already installed it, it's not showing that as an option. But all you have to do is open that up and press the install button. Once it's installed, it's so easy to use. Go back out to the Tools menu, and then at the top, you're going to see Artwork Scraper. Go ahead and open it. It's going to list the systems that you have games for. Just pick one. I'm going to do Commodore 64. Then you just have to wait for a little bit. It's going to download all of the artwork and then move it to the right folder. And then once it's done, back out all the way to the main menu. And you can see here in my Commodore 64 folder, my games and artwork have all been scraped. But because this has Wi-Fi, you can get updates to your add-ons. Here you can see them listed right here at the top. It looks like they've updated the Pack Store. And all I have to do to bring it up to date is press A. Now, one thing that NextUI doesn't have is a way to play just a random ass game, but with the Pack Store, you can. Load up the Pack Store and then head down to Browse, then Miscellaneous Tools, and then Random Game. If you want this, go ahead and press X, and then back out to the main menu. You'll see under Tools, you can now see a new menu item. Let's go ahead and try it. Press A, it says finding random game, and then it just picks a random game from your library. But maybe I don't actually want a random game, so let's uninstall that. Go back into the Pack Store, and instead of going into Browse under Manage, I can select Random Game, and then press X to uninstall it, and then X again in order to confirm. Another one that I think I want to add is Favorites, so I can mark the games that I really like as favorites so I can get to them quickly, and then I can easily have them show up in that list. In the Pack Store, under Browse, you can find this in the ROM Management section. Here we have the Collections Editor, Favorites, Games Manager, Mortar. I don't know what that does, so let's take a look. Everything in the Pack Store has a QR code. I can scan this with my phone and it brings up the repository so I can find out more about it. But let's go back to the brick and then Favorites. Press X and install. Now, under the Tools menu, you can find the game's favorites. Go ahead and open that and add to favorites. This will look at your recently played games, and then you can add favorites from that list. So I'll be adding Shining Force because that game is a GOAT. Now that I have a favorite game, I can go back into the main menu, and under the Collections section, it'll have a new menu called Favorites, which will show me all the games that I've added to that list. You can also use the Pack Store to install emulators that you don't already have installed on the device. None of these are something that I wanted for this project, but here's where you'll find them if you want to install them. In the Pack Store, head down to Emulators, pick any emulator you want, and press Install. Just for the example, I'm going to install Peak 08, which has some really cool but simple games that would run really well on the TrimUI Brick. Under File Management, you can do cloud backups of your save or sync thing, which is awesome if you're playing these games on multiple devices. And if you want a tutorial on setting these things up, let me know in the comment section down below that like button. Another thing I love about this particular operating system is when you first turn it on, it's automatically muted. So if you're in a waiting room and you want to play a few minutes of Shining Force rather than doom scrolling on your phone, you don't have to worry about the music blaring when you first turn it on. It is a fantastic feature, and it's thanks to this little switch that's on the right-hand side of the device. I also really like that with this operating system, I don't have to remember a bunch of multi-button shortcuts. Pretty much everything that I would like to do can be done through the menu button. Here I can make a save state, I can load a save state, I can continue from the last time I played under options. I have lots of other stuff that I can do. Under front end, I can change the screen scaling, which I'm using full screen, but if I want to change to native or aspect screen, I can. But I like full screen, so that's the one I'm going to stick with. And under screen effect, I can put fake scan lines or grid lines. It's really easy to do. You can access the emulator options under, you guessed it, emulator. And if I want to add in shaders, which I do because I'm not using integer scaling, you can do that on this menu as well. Just select shaders, and under the number of shaders, change that from off to 1, or, if you want to use multiple shaders, then 2 or 3 or however. The one that I like best is under the shader emulator settings preset. I chose Pixel Perfect-Smooth.cfg, and then under Shader 1, I chose Scale 3x.glsl. Under controls, you can assign your controls for each system. So for Sega Genesis, I don't like how they've set up the buttons by default. So I'll go in and I will make the Y button be the A button on a Genesis controller. The B button on the TrimUI Brick would be the B button on a Sega Genesis controller. And then the A button all the way over on the right is going to be my C button on a Sega Genesis controller, because then they're in a line just like on a Sega Genesis controller. XYZ, I really don't use all that much in Sega Genesis games, so I'll just assign the X to the X button. The left trigger will be my Y button, and then the Z button will be bound to my right trigger. But my absolute favorite thing about this operating system is something that was exactly the same on my Miyoo Mini Plus using, I think, Onion OS, if I remember correctly. And that is just holding down the power button when you have to stop playing. The system automatically makes a save state and then turns itself off. And then when you're ready to play, you just hold that button down again and it turns on and it jumps exactly into the game you were playing and the save state that you were playing at. From the NerdNest, I'm Bill. Thanks for watching. Stay rad.